Long before Rome became the center of an empire, before Latin became the language of law and power, before the Mediterranean was ever called Mare Nostrum, there existed another superpower, a city older than Rome, richer than Rome, and far more experienced in trade, navigation, and wealth. That city was Carthage. The struggle between Rome and Carthage was not just a series of battles, it was a collision between two different visions of civilization. One was a land-based republic built on discipline, citizenship, and conquest. The other was a maritime empire driven by trade, wealth, and naval dominance. Their conflict would decide who controlled the Mediterranean world, and in doing so, it would shape the future of Western civilization itself. Carthage was founded around 814 BC by Phoenician settlers from the city of Tyre, located in modern-day Lebanon. These settlers were merchants, sailors, and traders. They did not conquer vast territories by armies. Instead, they built a network of ports and trading colonies stretching across North Africa, Sicily, Sardinia, Spain, and beyond. Carthage became immensely wealthy, controlling the flow of goods such as silver, tin, grain, dyes, and slaves. Rome, by contrast, began as a small city-state along the Tiber River. For centuries, Rome fought to survive among hostile neighbors in Italy. Through discipline, organization, and relentless warfare, Rome slowly expanded its influence across the Italian peninsula. By the early 3rd century BCE, Rome had unified most of Italy under its control. At this point, Rome and Carthage were on a collision course. The Mediterranean Sea was the lifeline of the ancient world. Whoever controlled it controlled trade, wealth, and power. Carthage had ruled the Western Mediterranean for generations. Rome, until now, had little naval experience, but Rome's expansion into southern Italy brought it dangerously close to Carthaginian interests, especially on the island of Sicily. Sicily was the spark. The island sat at the center of Mediterranean trade routes. It was fertile, wealthy, and strategically vital. Both Rome and Carthage understood that whoever controlled Sicily would dominate the region. Tensions escalated when a group of mercenaries, known as the Mamertines, seized the city of Messana and appealed to both Rome and Carthage for help. Carthage responded first, sending troops to secure the city. Rome followed, claiming to protect Italian interests. What began as a local dispute quickly turned into a full-scale war between two superpowers. Into 64 BCE, the First Punic War began. At the start, Rome faced a massive disadvantage. Carthage possessed the greatest navy in the Mediterranean. Its sailors were experienced, its ships fast and maneuverable. Rome, on the other hand, had almost no naval tradition, but Rome adapted with ruthless efficiency. According to tradition, the Romans captured a Carthaginian warship and reverse-engineered it. They built hundreds of ships, based on the design, and trained thousands of sailors from scratch. Knowing they could not outmaneuver Carthaginian crews at sea, the Romans transformed naval warfare itself. They invented the corvus, a boarding bridge fitted with a spike. When a Roman ship approached an enemy vessel, the corvus would drop, locking the ships together. Naval battles turned into infantry battles at sea, allowing Roman soldiers to fight the way they knew best. This innovation changed everything. Into 60 BC, Rome won its first major naval victory at the Battle of Mylae. The Carthaginians were shocked. The balance of power had shifted. Over the next 2 decades, the war dragged on across Sicily, the sea, and the coast of North Africa. The First Punic War was brutal, expensive, and exhausting for both sides. Fleets were destroyed by storms, tens of thousands drowned, entire economies were strained to the breaking point. Rome lost ships again and again, yet each time rebuilt its navy with relentless determination. Carthage, despite its wealth, struggled to match Rome's ability to mobilize manpower and resources. Carthaginian armies relied heavily on mercenaries from across the Mediterranean. While effective, these forces lacked the loyalty and unity of Roman citizen soldiers. Into 41 BCE, after 23 years of warfare, the war ended at the Battle of the Aegates Islands. Rome's rebuilt fleet crushed the Carthaginian navy. Exhausted and bankrupt, Carthage sued for peace. The terms were devastating. Carthage surrendered Sicily, paid a massive indemnity, and lost its dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Rome emerged as a major naval power for the first time in its history. But the war was not over. The peace created bitterness and resentment in Carthage. To make matters worse, Carthage soon faced a brutal mercenary war when unpaid soldiers revolted. Rome, exploited Carthage's weakness, seizing Sardinia and Corsica and demanding even more tribute. From this humiliation emerged a family that would define the next phase of the conflict. The Barcid family. Hamilcar Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian general, believed Rome must be confronted again. He took Carthaginian forces to Iberia, modern-day Spain, where he built a new power base rich in silver and manpower. There, Carthage rebuilt its strength away from Roman interference. Hamilcar died in battle, but his legacy lived on through his son, Hannibal Barca. According to legend, Hannibal swore an oath of eternal hatred against Rome as a child. Whether myth or truth, his actions would soon terrify the Roman Republic. In 218 BC, Hannibal launched one of the most daring military campaigns in history. Instead of attacking Rome by sea, where Roman power was strongest, Hannibal marched his army from Spain, across southern Gaul, and over the Alps into Italy itself. He brought with him tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, and war elephants. The journey was a nightmare. Mountain passes, freezing temperatures, hostile tribes, landslides, and starvation decimated his forces. Yet Hannibal emerged from the Alps with a battle-hardened army and complete strategic surprise. Rome was stunned. What followed was the Second Punic War, a conflict that nearly destroyed Rome. Hannibal defeated Roman armies repeatedly. At the Battle of the Trebia River, Roman legions were annihilated. At Lake Trasimene, Hannibal ambushed and destroyed another Roman force, killing thousands. Rome was bleeding. Then came Cannae. Into 16 BCE, near the village of Cannae, Hannibal faced one of the largest armies Rome had ever assembled. Roman commanders believed sheer numbers would crush him. They were wrong. Hannibal executed one of the most brilliant tactical maneuvers in military history. He allowed his center to retreat while his flanks encircled the Roman army. The result was total destruction. Between 50,000 and 70,000 Romans were killed in a single day. The Roman Republic stood on the edge of collapse. Cities defected. Allies wavered. Fear gripped Rome. Hannibal had achieved what no enemy had done before. He had shattered Rome's armies on their own soil. Yet Rome did not surrender. Instead, Rome adapted once again. Roman leaders adopted a strategy of avoidance, refusing to face Hannibal in open battle. They cut off supplies, harassed his allies, and slowly wore him down. This approach, later called the Fabian strategy, was deeply unpopular, but ultimately effective. Meanwhile, Rome carried the war beyond Italy. Roman forces attacked Carthaginian holdings in Spain, gradually dismantling the Barcid power base. A young Roman general emerged during this phase, a man who would change the course of history. His name was Scipio. Scipio proved himself in Spain, defeating Carthaginian forces and earning the loyalty of his soldiers. Eventually, he took the war directly to North Africa, threatening Carthage itself. Forced to defend their homeland, the Carthaginians recalled Hannibal from Italy. After more than 15 years of campaigning, in 200 BCE, Hannibal and Scipio faced each other at the Battle of Zama. For the first time, Hannibal was defeated. Rome emerged victorious once more. Carthage was stripped of its empire, its navy reduced, its army disbanded, and its independence effectively destroyed. It was forbidden from waging war without Roman permission. Rome was now the dominant power of the Mediterranean, but fear remained. Roman leaders believed Carthage, even weakened, was a threat to their survival. One Roman senator ended every speech with the same phrase: "Carthage must be destroyed." That belief would lead to the final chapter. Carthage had not been destroyed in a single moment, nor had Rome emerged victorious through one decisive battle alone. The war between Rome and Carthage was not a clash of armies only, but a struggle of systems, cultures, and visions of power. It was a war of endurance, adaptation, and survival, where mistakes were paid for with annihilation. After the catastrophic Roman defeat at Cannae, the Mediterranean world waited. Kingdoms watched, tribes hesitated, allies reconsidered their loyalties. Hannibal had done what no enemy had ever achieved before. He had humiliated Rome on its own soil. Yet Rome did not surrender. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The Roman Republic chose resistance over reason, sacrifice over negotiation. They raised new legions from teenagers and old men. They armed slaves. They melted down temple treasures. They refused to meet Hannibal in open battle again. This marked the turning point of the war. Rome adopted a strategy later known as the Fabian strategy, named after Quintus Fabius Maximus. Rather than confronting Hannibal directly, Roman forces harassed his supply lines, avoided pitched battles, and slowly strangled his ability to sustain his army. Hannibal could win battles, but he could not win the war without reinforcements. Carthage failed him. Despite Hannibal's brilliance, the Carthaginian Senate was divided, cautious, and politically paralyzed. They feared empowering a general who might rival their authority. Reinforcements were delayed or denied. Supplies were insufficient. Hannibal was left isolated in enemy territory, forced to rely on local allies who gradually lost faith. Meanwhile, Rome learned. Roman commanders studied Hannibal's tactics, copied them, and adapted. They reformed their cavalry. They improved coordination between units. They turned flexibility into doctrine. Rome was no longer the rigid army Hannibal had destroyed. It was evolving. The war expanded beyond Italy. Rome attacked Carthaginian holdings in Spain. Recognizing that Iberia was the economic lifeline of Carthage, silver mines, manpower, and trade routes flowed from Spain into the Carthaginian war effort. To cut Hannibal off, Rome sent a new generation of commanders. Among them was a young man who would become one of history's greatest generals, Publius Cornelius Scipio. Scipio learned from Hannibal's methods. He understood mobility, deception, and morale. In Spain, Roman forces defeated Carthaginian armies, dismantled their power base, and killed Hannibal's brothers who attempted to bring reinforcements into Italy. Hannibal was now truly alone. As Rome regained strength, the balance shifted. Italian allies began returning to Roman control. Hannibal's army shrank due to attrition, desertion, and the inability to replace losses. His brilliance remained, but brilliance alone could not sustain a war of decades. Scipio then proposed a bold plan: attack Carthage itself. By taking the war to North Africa, Rome could force Hannibal to return home and defend his city. The Roman Senate hesitated, remembering past disasters, but eventually approved the plan. Scipio landed in Africa. He forged alliances with Numidian tribes, undermining Carthage's cavalry advantage. He defeated Carthaginian forces in a series of engagements, burning camps and disrupting logistics. Carthage panicked. For the first time, the war was no longer distant. It was at their gates. Carthage recalled Hannibal. After more than 15 years in Italy, Hannibal returned to Africa a hero, but also a symbol of lost opportunity. His army was no longer the veteran force of Kenny. Many were inexperienced recruits. Others were mercenaries with limited loyalty. In 200 BCE, the war reached its final confrontation at the Battle of Zama. Two giants faced each other: Scipio, the Roman who had learned from Hannibal; Hannibal, the Carthaginian who had nearly destroyed Rome. The battle was tense, disciplined, and decisive. Hannibal's war elephants were neutralized by Roman tactics. Roman and Numidian cavalry overwhelmed Carthage's flanks. Hannibal's infantry fought with desperation, but the outcome was inevitable. Carthage was defeated. The terms of peace were brutal. Carthage lost its empire, its navy, its independence in foreign policy, and its military autonomy. It was reduced to a client state of Rome. The Second Punic War was over, but the rivalry was not. Carthage survived, economically resilient but politically shackled. Rome grew suspicious of any recovery. The phrase "Carthage must be destroyed" echoed in Roman politics for decades. Eventually, Rome returned. In the Third Punic War, Roman forces besieged Carthage itself. After years of resistance, the city fell. In 146 BC. Carthage was burned. Its population was killed or enslaved. The city was erased. Rome now ruled the Mediterranean. The Punic Wars transformed Rome from a regional power into an imperial superstate. They reshaped Roman identity, military doctrine, and political culture. They created immense wealth and deep inequality. They produced generals who would later challenge the Republic itself. Hannibal, despite his defeat, became immortal. He was remembered not as a loser, but as Rome's greatest enemy. His tactics were studied for centuries. His campaigns are still taught in military academies today. The war between Rome and Carthage was not simply a struggle for territory. It was a contest between two civilizations, two economic systems, two visions of dominance. Rome won, but the cost was enormous. The Mediterranean became Roman, but Rome itself was forever changed, more militarized, more ambitious, and ultimately more vulnerable to internal collapse. The Punic Wars proved a timeless truth of history. Victory does not come without consequences, and the destruction of an enemy often plants the seeds of one's own future.